Nearly 1 month ago, I released my video ranking all the Quarry characters from worst to best, and you guys loved it. So now only makes sense for me to now take a step back in time and take a closer look at the game that started it all, my precious Until Dawn. Exclusively released for the PlayStation 4 in 2015, this game has become a cult classic in the horror and choice genre within the video games world. Becoming one of the earliest experiences I've made with horror games in my life, I've watched dozens of people play through this incredible story throughout the past 7 years, still finding myself coming back to it even nowadays. But this is what makes this ranking quite different compared to the one for the Quarry. Because unlike that game, I've unfortunately never played Until Dawn. I've never owned a PlayStation. And yes, while I did, as mentioned, watch lots of people play this game over the years, it's obviously still a major difference between having experienced the story on your own or watch someone else experience it for you. The characters, the story and its twist, the setting and the emotions, and most obviously making the choices, not having played the game myself, certainly gives this ranking a different feeling, especially given the fact that I experienced the Quarry around 3 months prior to making a ranking. In Until Dawn's case, it's been 7 years since I first watched it, with me being just 14 years old as the game released. Would my ranking look different if I had played the game myself? 100%. Would my experience with the game be different if I would watch it for the first time now as an adult in comparison to back then as a kid? Certainly. Have I still consumed enough Until Dawn content within my life to still give a valid and reasonable ranking of its characters? I think so. Same case as for the Quarry, several things influence the ranking of the characters. It's not just about who's the most likable, it's about what a character does for the story, its impact on both the game and the player, how much they affect the experience, their flaws, their strengths, lasting impressions, and so much more. So lean back as I take you a trip down memory lane as I will rank all characters in Until Dawn from worst to best. Enjoy. Just like for the Quarry, being at the bottom of the ranking does not immediately equal that the character, or in this case characters, are bad. The minors are an important aspect of the story in Until Dawn, ultimately ending up as trapped Wendigos that Mike will encounter within the sanatorium. Finding clues about their history and slowly starting to put one on one together and realizing what happened was one of my favorite experiences within the game. It's an excellent showcase of how to do interesting backstory that you're excited to continue exploring, while also having it all connect to the bigger picture and give the threat that you're facing in the game an even deeper meaning. Again, even though the minors / regular Wendigos rank at the bottom of this ranking, they're a crucial and fantastic aspect of this incredible game. The youngest of the Washington children, Beth is one of these supportive characters that aren't with you for a long time but still make for an important part of the bigger picture. Playing her in the prologue, Beth's fate is always sealed no matter what you do, making it obvious why she ends up so low in this ranking. However, solving her and Hannah's disappearance and what's really happened to them is just like figuring out the mystery surrounding the minors, one of my favorite things about the game. It's really not much about Beth, the person that makes her a great supportive character, but her role in the story even after her early death. And additionally, finding her head in the mines as Emily makes one of the most memorable morbid moments that I have experienced within horror games. Jessica, the girl that walked so that Emma could run. A statement that makes sense in several ways, as she isn't just like her, the typical hot blonde mean girl, but also because Emma actually ends up being a much more interesting and important character. Jessica's one of those examples of how not all protagonists can end up with the same level of game importance and screen time, just in this case even more extreme. I mean, even Nick has more impact in the Quarry, and that's saying something. But seriously, you can just tell that Jessica was never given as much attention during development as the other characters. She's the, as mentioned, stereotypical hot blonde mean girl that just isn't really interesting in any way. Her relationship with Mike is something really exciting to follow along, their scenes are endearing in some way, but ultimately just early game slowness. She will always be attacked and dragged that way at the end of chapter 3, which makes for a cool moment, but that's because the moment is cool, not because it's Jessica. She then either dies or doesn't, it barely matters, as we literally won't see her again up until chapter 9 and play, or find it depending on Matt's fate in chapter 10. One short section later, and that's it with Jessica. Did you know that according to some sources that Jessica was stated to be a character that always dies in beta versions of the game? The end result definitely still makes it seem like it. I mean, you can possibly only play her 3 times in the entire game, and you can't find any clues either. That's insane. I don't dislike Jessica, but I'm not the biggest fan of her either. You may feel sad for her given the state she's in at the end, or may even feel happy given she was the main initiator of the prank, but ultimately Jessica is a main protagonist that barely affects the story and is only really there to give Mike a reason to become an actually good character. She's unfortunately just unimportant and wasn't given enough screen time or development to reach a higher ranking on this list. While Jessica is a typical blonde, Matt makes for the typical sports guy, with the difference here that he actually isn't a douche that is full of himself, but actually a good guy with a pure heart that is really caring for his girlfriend, maybe even too much. Matt's relationship with Emily is actually somewhat intriguing, but it's basically it about him. Just like Jessica, Matt is one of the lower prioritized protagonists, with not enough screen time or development to feel as important as the others. The fact that one of his sections with Emily is a pre-ordered bonus and therefore not available to majority of players doesn't help him either. Up until chapter 6, Matt is barely present. Here he can now die earlier after trying to protect Emily following the radio sequence, which is only one of the game highlights. Even if he does survive here, we won't see him up until chapter 10, where he either dies or survives alone, or together with Jessica after a short sequence, and that's it. Just like Jessica, Matt is an afterthought by default. While she plays the girlfriend next to Mike, he plays the boyfriend next to Emily, and nothing really else. I think he's certainly more likable than Jessica, but he's too bland to be gaining lots of sympathy. He's just okay, you know? You want him to survive and all, but after finishing the game, Matt will barely be the conversation, outside of maybe wondering why he was as little present as he was. He's just there, and what we got from him was fine, but not enough to warrant a higher ranking. The GOAT! The GOAT! Okay, I know, we all love and adore the precious good boy that is Wolfie, but I gotta be realistic here and keep him in the lower sections of this ranking. Wolfie is a minor character that we only see in 2 chapters, but his fate is actually in your hands. The few scenes we have with him are gold and a much needed relief within all the chaos. Seriously, after all the stress and tension, taking a moment to give the good boy some pets and food just really eases one up for a bit before continuing. His fight sequences with Mike are game highlights, and seeing him get killed is actually heart-wrenching. I mean, seriously, I felt more seeing him die than some of the main characters. Think about that what you want. I know most of y'all feel the same way though. Does it feel kind of weird ranking a wolf above 2 of the main protagonists? Honestly, yeah, but in the short time that Wolfie was around, he was simply more memorable than either Jessica or Matt, which you can either take as a way to show how little attention these 2 got, or how they managed to make an animal ally such an enjoyable part of a game in such short time. A perfect example of how to make a supportive character an incredibly memorable one. The way the game makes you think that the stranger is a threat and the antagonist throughout the early stages of the game, just to later reveal he was helping you all this time, was brilliantly executed and really helped in making this character feel special. Devoting his entire life to trapping the Wendigos, Jack Fiddler is a badass. I mean, he spends his life hunting and trapping monsters with a flamethrower, hello? Additionally, he makes for a great natural way to clear up the place with necessary information from chapter 8, and even though his fate is sealed and he will always die, his death is a memorable and important one, showing that even someone as experienced as him will fall to the Wendigo if distracted and unfocused. Character with little screen time but very effective usage and strong impact on both the story and game experience. Just like the curator for the Dark Pictures Anthology or Eliza for the Quarry, Dr. Hill is an amazing game experience evaluating character that for Until Dawn actually affects the game. His therapy sections are 100% the best in between chapters content Supermassive Games has ever done, and the fact that your choices here actually influence the game word sections is insane. The little choices you make here affect not just that, but even both his dialogue and look. But it's obviously game mechanic and not necessarily on the character itself. But even here, Dr. Hill is such an amazingly entertaining narrator, thanks to the incredible performance by actor Peter Stormare. The way he talks to us, the players, just to later realize he spoke to Josh the entire time, is just another of many fantastic twists that this game has to offer. Dr. Hill is a memorable character that made the experience that is Until Dawn both better and simply more enjoyable. If there is one thing that Supermassive Games knows how to do, its characters in between the actual chapters know how to entertain you in several ways. Ashley Brown, or as I like to nowadays call her, the Ryan of Until Dawn. Or Ryan the Ashley of the Quarry. Choose your side. What I'm trying to say with this is that Ashley is a character that I know some people love, while I know some others that hate her. And it's mostly either of those 2 sides. How do I feel about Ashley? Quite neutral, as I look at her as a whole. How you feel about her is totally dependent on you, as Ashley is one of the game's most prominent characters, especially within the first half of the game. Her and Chris's relationship is a core focus here, and certainly the most intriguing of the 3 presented to us. However, what I especially enjoy about Ashley the character is that she is the one we shaped the most. She was barely involved with the prank, and it's up to us how we make her feel, whether or not she will be filled with regret about last year or ever put the blame on Hannah. Ashley will reflect the player the most out of any character, which instantly makes her much more intriguing and important than previous main protagonists like Jessica or Matt. Whatever you choose here, you will still realize that she cares for her friends, telling Chris to shoot her to save himself, and also caring for Jessica's voices in the mines. But this is also where the ship can sink for many. Despite telling Chris to shoot her, she will later remember that choice and ultimately immediately let him die. Holy shit. She may also be hostile towards Emily if she was bitten, telling her to go away, not caring for other options. This double-sided blade within her personality is what makes her such character that people will either love or hate. It feels like depending on your choices, you will either love or hate Ashley at the end of your playthrough. Characters like Matt or Jessica, and even yet to be talked about protagonists, have much more straightforward personalities and paths within the game. Ashley is the character that is the most influenced by your choices in so many ways, and that what makes her such a key part of Until Dawn. She will ignite conversations, and that for good and valuable reasons, and both sides will have understandable points as to why they may like or dislike her. Again, the way you feel about Ashley is heavily affected by your playthrough. You need to look at the bigger picture to ultimately judge, and that is where Ashley becomes a fantastically flawed character. She's a young, scared, and somewhat naive woman that just wants to survive the terror, and in such state, it only feels human that she may make choices influenced by her terrorized emotions and feelings. Ashley is the character that you shape the most out of an ensemble of characters that can all be shaped. Ashley may be a useless and pathetic bitch that even kills you, or an innocent, smart, and observant girl that you try your best to protect. She's the best example of how our choices create characters that we either love or hate. Ashley herself is, in my opinion, likable, and it's on you to shape what she will turn into. A great character that really shows how our choices matter. Not involved within the prank at all, Chris is the first character in this ranking that you can truly call an all the way through good person, unless you make him kill the squirrel. Fuck that. But yeah, Chris is a character that takes the center stage for the early half of the game alongside Ashley, and is genuinely likable. He regrets what happened and truly doesn't deserve the shit that Josh puts him through, making him decide between crush and friend, then crush and himself, which may ultimately lead to his death. God damn, you gotta feel for him. His reactions are understandable and reasonable, and depending on your skills, you can become quite the baddest gunswinger when attacked by the Wendigo. No matter what happens, I feel like Chris is a character that shouldn't be disliked. I just don't see how one could think badly of him. He's certainly less complex than Ashley, and that's totally okay. The character itself is someone that finds himself in a horrifying situation he doesn't deserve to be in, yet tries to make the best out of it. He's a brave and caring friend that tries to protect those he cares for, yet he isn't perfect either, potentially making wrong decisions, but ultimately, Chris is one of the more straightforward yet positively enjoyable main protagonists that Supermassive Games has released. He's funny, relatable, and just someone I genuinely like. Kinda like Max, just with more action restoring importance. Chris is great, and you know you like him when it hurts you seeing him die by the hands of the girl he lost, or after mourning her. Remember when I said Ashley is the character you either love or hate depending on your choices? Well, no matter what you do, majority of people will end up hating Emily. And honestly, as someone that has mentioned never got to play the game but only watched others do so, she might be the most entertaining character of them all. The thing about Emily is that without her, the game would simply be missing something. She fuels the dynamic of the experience so much that I just can't imagine the game without her. I can totally see why so many people dislike Emily. She's a bit of an arrogant bitch, but honestly, I find her to be more likable than Emma, given that the latter seems to be a bitch just for the sake of it. Emily at least has some conflict going on that would make it understandable for her to be hostile towards people. Jessica that gets together with her ex, Matt that may leave her to die, Ashley that tells her to go if she gets bit. Emily gets a lot of shit from the outside, so I understand why she has a hard shell and loves to shoot back. Is she still a bit too full of herself and could be nicer? Surely. But again, Emily, the way she is simply an entertaining and spot-on controversial character. Oh, and because I haven't mentioned it yet, depending on your QTE skills, Emily turns into an absolute badass. The chase sequence in the mines is one of the game's highlights, and the fact that she may survive said encounter is crazy. Even if she does end up dying, she shows great survival instincts and why she is someone to be reckoned with. Emily is a character we only get to play 3 times, but it's memorable each time. She's a walking highlight reel in both story inclusion and delivery. Nicole Bloom makes a memorable performance, and I think you know exactly what I'm talking about when I say she has 2 of the most memorable lines within the game. Emily is a character that many people dislike for not so wrong reasons, but I personally found her to be both the most entertaining and generally underrated character. Until Dawn simply wouldn't be the way it is without Emily, and I think that alone earns her a spot within the top 5. Sam walked so that Laura could run. Just like Chris, Sam was basically the only one not involved within the prank, which already tells a lot about her. Just like other characters, Sam is also someone whose personality you can shape within the dialogue, which makes her once again a character that reflects her own choices. One of the main similarities to Laura is that for the beginning, she's more of an afterthought in the story, as she's casually taking a bath while the friends get tortured and killed. Not a fault though. Her chase sequence with the Psycho then in Chapter 5 is another game highlight, before slowly but steadily taking the main character role alongside Mike. I won't even lie, the fact that Sam can't be killed up until the end kinda makes her a better character than Jessica or Matt, as example, by default, simply because she receives much more screen time and story importance by default. But even despite the plot armor, Sam is just like Chris, an extremely likable character that kicks ass and you really want to see survive. However, what makes Sam especially special is how once again, you, the player, ultimately decide what kind of character she ends up being. The badass hero that saved all her friends, or the coward that leaves her friends to die to save herself. Sam is a great female lead that, even when plot armored into such position, feels like a naturally likable main character. She's caring and protective, yet may end up killing her friends, showing that she's just a human that makes drastic mistakes in the heat of the moment. Either way, Sam is one of Supermassive Games' most likable characters, and she more than earned herself a spot this high in the ranking. If we talk about Sam being plot armored into a main character position, then there's only Mike that can beat her in that aspect. But seriously, Mike kills it in this role and is the character that undergoes the most change. From douchebag that uses people to heroic and caring badass, at least if you make him so. While Ashley is the character that you shape the most in terms of personality, Mike is the one you shape the most by actions. He can either be the hero that makes it just in time to save Jessica, or fail and see her die. He can become the reasonable head in the room and spare Emily, or murder her in cold blood. He can be the badass Wendigo escaper, or be the tool that gets Wolfie killed and only gets saved by plot armor. Obviously, latter and his general writing also somewhere push him into such high ranking by default, but I truly enjoyed the arc that Mike went through. He can become that hero that, if necessary, even sacrifices himself to end the nightmare. He is, alongside Sam, the main character, so does it feel a bit cheap to rank him this high? Not necessarily. You can find it unfair towards Jessica or Matt that they weren't given enough time to progress themselves, but Mike, with the time he gets, becomes an incredible lead that brought me all kind of emotions. He made me laugh, entertained me, infuriated me, made me shout in excitement or in anger, and so much more. Mike is a memorable lead, and it would feel wrong to rank him any lower than within the top 3. The player's choices decide what type of character Mike ends up being, which makes him an amazingly flawed lead for a choice-based horror game, and in my opinion, one of the best characters in Until Dawn. Now, this may raise some eyebrows. Let me explain. Yes, Hannah Washington the Human is nothing else but a supportive character that fuels the story the same way every single playthrough. But this isn't about Hannah Washington the Human. This is about Hannah Washington, the Wendigo. The Macapitu, one of the, in my opinion, most terrifying, amazing, memorable, entertaining, and simply best antagonists that I've ever seen, not just within the monster genre, not just within video games, not just within horror, but across all media. Yes, that is a statement, but one that I will stand for with my damn name. The Wendigo legend itself was perfectly executed within Until Dawn, and while we can look at the minors as the Wendigos just as we can with Hannah, she is the main Wendigo of the game, and holy shit, is she iconic. Hannah as Wendigo is the main reason as to why I love Until Dawn as much as I do. The slow realization of this not being a typical slasher/Saw ripoff, but a game with so much more story to it, is a feeling that I will never forget. The moment the twist became real and one realized that this creature that is hunting us is actually Hannah is one of the most bone-chilling experiences I can remember. My 14-year itself was blown away by the story arc, just like I am then, but even still nowadays terrified and intimidated by the monster that is Hannah as Wendigo. Everything about the design, everything about her behavior is 10 out of 10. And this is where I look at Hannah differently than the minors. The latter were in some way just there without much to them outside of the backstory, but Hannah, a girl we actually knew, turning into this creature due to us and then taking the opportunity to hunt us down one by one, is pure cinema. Additionally, Hannah herself remains within the Wendigo. She's still in there. She didn't just turn into a soulless monster. Trapped within the Wendigo spirit, Hannah purposely never directly kills Mike as she still has feelings for him. She may spare her brother if he calls out for her in time, while on the other hand, taking pleasure in killing everyone else. Whatever you want to see this as, me ranking Hannah Washington or the Macapitu spirit, is up to you. However, influenced by the personality of the young woman the spirit possessed, this version of the Wendigo is one of my, if not my favorite media villain ever, and something that Supermassive Games has yet to replicate again in such quality. If they will ever reach this level of bone-chilling epicness ever again, who knows? What I do know is that even though I love the Wendigo this much, there's still one character that I have to put above it. Simply for the fact that without him, Until Dawn wouldn't be Until Dawn. Who could represent this game better than the Wendigos? You already know who. I would consider Josh, alongside Salim and Dylan, the 3 greatest characters within all Supermassive games. Who you want to consider the best out of those three is something for a future video. This is the definition of how to make an intriguing, flawed, yet understandable and tragic character. Josh Washington is alongside the Wendigos the highlight of the game and one of the main reasons it has become as special to me as it is. He's the one suffering the most from the tragedy. The characters we play are in the most way responsible for the disappearance of his sisters. Plagued by mental illness, Josh turns crazy and tortures us for what we did, but not even the ones the most responsible, such as Matt, Emily, Mike, and Jessica, but the three most innocent ones in Sam, Chris, and Ashley. It's a great showcase of how twisted it might has truly become, planning all of this insane revenge for those that least deserved it. That automatically makes you think that Josh is a terrible human being, but he isn't. It's the mental illness that is eating him from within and makes him hurt those that try to help him and his sisters. This crazy plan that sees him become the first antagonist of the game all culminates in everyone getting caught within the Wendigo crossfire. From mentally damaged Fred that only wanted to have some fun to deal with his sister's tragedy, to the only character that will never have a happy end. He will either get his head crushed by his own sister or become a Wendigo himself. No matter what happens, Josh won't survive the night. Without him, the story wouldn't exist. Without him, everyone would still be alive. He will always die or lose his spirit, and the question is, does he deserve it? Does the young man with mental illness that lost both of his sisters deserve this fate because of the things that his mind made him do? This question alone makes Josh the best character within the game. He makes you think, question yourself. He provided some of the game's most iconic moments, and even in my opinion, greatest death. Josh is a tragic victim, villain, and hero of Until Dawn. A victim due to his illness, a villain due to leading his friends into a night they will never forget, yet ultimately a hero for being the catalyst that leads to his sister's spirit finally getting to rest after the pain she had to endure, even if it cost him his life, or he will now have to endure the same fate. No matter what you want to call him, no matter what role he takes for you, he is the character that you simply won't forget. Josh Washington, the most tragic, infuriating, complicated, but especially understanding, and in my opinion, best character within Until Dawn. This is it with my ranking of all characters in Until Dawn from worst to best. Trust me, this video took a lot of time, okay? Like mentioned, due to never having played this game myself, was certainly a different challenge and a different script to write and approach than the one for the Quarry, who ultimately ended up at nearly 5,000 words right there, and it really took me a while, but I'm now glad it ended up the way it did, and yeah, I really hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, gladly leave a like down below to show me that you did. Obviously, what I once again am most intrigued for is to see your ranking and your thoughts on all the characters down below in the comment section. And as always, if you enjoy what I'm doing, if you want to support me, you can gladly leave a sub as well, or support me on Patreon. It would help me a lot. As already hinted, a future ranking video that you will see on this channel will be ranking all the main protagonists in all games. So not just Until Dawn, not just the Quarry, but also involving the Dark Pictures anthology. This video will be worked on and fully released once The Devil in Me has released. Okay, so that will be something probably at the end of the year. Maybe this will be the last video of 2022. But that's for the future, okay? For the upcoming time, we will continue our God of War playthrough, okay? We'll be starting our second attempt on Pokemon Black 2 Nuzlocke and just generally release more content surrounding the Supermassive games and so much more. So for whatever content you may be interested in, for whatever content you may want you in for, I will see you again soon on this channel. Stay safe, healthy, and happy. Have a great time with a great remaining weekend, and see you again soon with more Until Dawn, The Quarry, or any type of gaming content. Thank you guys so much for watching.